The story does not begin under bright lights or roaring crowds. It begins far away from packed arenas, in a place shaped by instability, movement, and quiet determination. Long before the world started paying attention, before highlights and headlines, Duop Reath was already learning how to survive, adapt, and keep moving forward. This documentary explores that journey, the moments that shaped it, and the reason his name is suddenly part of a much larger conversation. This is the story of how Duop Reath rose from an uncertain beginning to global recognition, how patience and persistence defined his path, and why his career has reached a critical moment right now. It is a story about timing, opportunity, and what happens when preparation finally meets visibility. Duop Reath was born into circumstances that were far from stable. His early life was shaped by displacement and change, experiences that would later influence his mindset, both on and off the court. Like many families affected by regional conflict, his childhood included relocation and adjustment to new environments. These early transitions were not about chasing dreams or building careers. They were about safety, survival, and starting over. Eventually, his family settled in a new country, one with a different culture, language, and rhythm of life. For a young Duop Reath, this meant learning how to fit in while still holding on to a sense of identity. Sports became a quiet refuge, not immediately as a professional ambition, but as a way to connect, to belong, and to express himself without words. Basketball was not the first plan. In fact, it arrived relatively late compared to many elite athletes. His physical attributes were noticeable but raw. There was little polish, little structured training, and no clear roadmap. What stood out instead was curiosity and a willingness to learn. Coaches noticed that while his skills were developing, his discipline and responsiveness to instruction were already there. Education played an important role in this phase. School was not only a place of learning, but also a space where basketball slowly became more serious. He balanced academics with training, often without the certainty that the sport would ever turn into a career. This balance created a grounded approach. Basketball was important, but it was not everything. As Duop Reath entered higher levels of competition, the reality of the sport became clearer. Progress was steady, not explosive. He was not labeled a prodigy or fast-tracked into fame. Instead, he moved through systems that required patience. Development leagues, overseas opportunities, and constant evaluation became part of his routine. This period tested commitment. Many players leave the game here, worn down by uncertainty and limited exposure. For Duop Reath, this was where mental strength became critical. He accepted roles, adjusted his game, and focused on incremental improvement. Each season became less about recognition and more about reliability. The career truly began to take shape when consistency replaced experimentation. His defensive presence improved, his shooting range expanded, his understanding of spacing, timing, and team structure matured. Coaches began to trust him not just as a physical presence, but as a dependable contributor. Recognition did not arrive overnight. It came quietly, through solid performances and internal evaluations rather than viral moments. Still, the momentum was building. Opportunities at higher levels started to appear, and with them, increased scrutiny. Every appearance now carried weight. Major achievements followed, not as isolated breakthroughs, but as confirmation of years of preparation. Making rosters, earning minutes, and contributing in meaningful situations became milestones. Each one represented validation that the long route had been worth it. But the journey was not without setbacks. There were seasons where opportunities were limited, games where mistakes were magnified, periods where his role was uncertain. These moments did not create public controversy, but they created internal pressure. The challenge was staying ready without guarantees. This brings us to the moment that changed everything. The reason duop reath is trending right now is not accidental, and it is not the result of a single highlight. It is the result of a convergence of timing, performance, and narrative. The trend began following a stretch of recent games where duop reath delivered performances that exceeded expectations. These were not empty statistics. They came in meaningful minutes against strong opponents, often in situations where his team needed stability. Analysts and commentators began pointing out his efficiency, defensive impact, and composure. What made this moment different from previous solid performances was context. Injuries, roster changes, and strategic adjustments created an opening. When that opening appeared, duop reath was prepared. He didn't need time to adjust. He stepped in and performed immediately. Clips started circulating, not flashy plays, but sequences showing awareness, positioning, and decision-making. These are the types of moments that coaches value deeply, but fans often overlook. This time, they were noticed. Media coverage followed. Articles and segments began framing his story not just as a player having a good run, but as an example of persistence paying off. The narrative shifted from role player to reliable presence. This distinction matters. It changes how a player is perceived within an organization and across the league. The timing of this trend is critical. It comes at a point in his career where experience and physical readiness intersect. Earlier in his journey, similar opportunities may not have been fully capitalized on. Now, the game appears slower to him. Reads are quicker. Confidence is visible. Another factor driving the trend is relatability. Audiences connect with stories that involve long journeys rather than instant success. Duop reath represents a path many athletes walk, but few receive attention for. His recent visibility has turned him into a reference point for discussions about development systems, late bloomers, and international talent pipelines. Social media amplified this conversation. Fans began sharing context, background, and comparisons. The discussion expanded beyond performance to include what his rise represents within the sport. That broader meaning is why the trend has sustained momentum instead of fading after a single game. This moment matters because it may redefine the remainder of his career. Trends in professional sports often determine opportunity. Increased visibility leads to trust, trust leads to responsibility, and responsibility leads to longevity. For duop reath, this is not just about recognition, it's about establishing a permanent place. Public reaction has been measured but positive. There's respect rather than hype. Analysts highlight his fundamentals. Fans appreciate his story. Teammates acknowledge his readiness. The tone is calm, which aligns with how his career has unfolded. Currently, duop reath stands at an important juncture. He is no longer an unknown name, but he is not yet a central figure. This space allows growth without overwhelming pressure. If performance continues at this level, future possibilities include expanded roles, leadership responsibilities, and extended career stability. Long-term, his impact goes beyond statistics. His journey reinforces the value of development, patience, and adaptability. For younger players following unconventional paths, his story offers evidence that progress does not need to be immediate to be meaningful. In the larger context of the sport, duop reath represents how global basketball continues to evolve. Talent emerges from diverse backgrounds, shaped by different systems, arriving at the highest levels through persistence rather than spotlight. As this chapter continues to unfold, the attention around him serves as a reminder. Success is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, built on years of preparation, waiting for the right moment. This documentary explored the life, career, and current rise of duop reath, the factors behind his recent trend, and what it may mean for the future. If you want more in-depth stories like this, focused on real journeys and real moments, make sure to subscribe and stay connected for the next documentary.